Okay, guys, hopefully all of you are doing well. Guys, I know we're almost there. We have about 3 weeks left after this week. Well, today's Thursday, so we have 3 weeks left of stuff. You can do it, okay? Some of us are staying strong and some of us are starting to drop off and not work on anything, okay? Make sure that you're continuing. This is going to be important for higher level science classes that you have this background. We only have 3 more weeks of material and then we'll be done. So, guys, please go back, look at all of your stuff. Make sure a lot of us are skipping tests. So go back and make sure that your tests are being turned in. A lot of us are skipping homework and papers. So really go back. Remember, guys, in order to improve your grade, you have to complete 70% of the work. Right now, we're sitting at 10 assignments. So that means as of now, you should have 7 done, and both the tests need to be completed. That's the biodiversity threat paper, and that's the limiting factor and populations quiz that we took. So go back and make sure all those are completed. Okay, so we're gonna just take some notes today. So real easy, take some notes, and I'll post them there. Make sure you have all of your assignments turned in, and then you guys will have a 3-day weekend. Okay, so we're still in evolution. We're gonna talk about how genes cause and variations, and take a look at that. Okay, so let's get some definitions that you need to know for the test. So the gene pool, this is all the alleles. Remember when we did genetics, those letters like a big T or a little t, like big T for tall, little t for short, those are alleles. So a gene pool is all of the different combinations we can have in a population. Okay, when the frequency of alleles change in a gene pool, evolution is occurring. Okay, so if we see like more T's, maybe you're favoring more tall, or we see little t's are favored short, over time evolution is occurring. So we're going to use your pepper moth lab that everyone should have finished. Okay. I gave you Tuesday and Wednesday to work on that, so make sure you go back there. That's really important to know. That's a key concept. So we're going to use big B for black and little b for like the white moth or the cream, the light color. So if the forest is unpolluted, that means the forest is light. Okay, the light color moths are going to blend into the forest better and are less likely to be eaten by birds. Most surviving moths would have a little b genotype. Okay, so we're going to see most of the population little b. Now we will see some uppercase B, or uppercase B, lowercase b, but they're not going to be as common because they're mostly getting eaten by birds. So take a look at this. This is moths in unpolluted forest. Clearly, if a bird was looking from the skyline, they're going to see this, okay? The white ones here, and you guys even saw me in the lab. I barely could get them. Also, I have really terrible eyes, but it's hard to see. They have pollution. Now, what happened, and you guys read this in the article, is pollution, the Industrial Revolution happened, there started to get a lot more pollution. It started to make the trees really dark. It darkened the forest. Now it is better to be dark to blend in. So over time, moths that are surviving are going to either be the heterozygous big B little b or big B big B. The frequency of the big B allele increases and the frequency of the little b allele decreases. And this is what is evolution. And guys, most of the time we're talking about millions of years, sometimes thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. But this is actually a case of fast evolution because we saw it happening pretty fast. Okay, so here's one in a polluted forest. Again, these guys are blending in, and this is what's going to stick out as the white moth. Okay, so populations start with variation. Some sources, sometimes mutations occur. We talked about mutation. Crossing over, this was in meiosis. Remember, your DNA from mom and dad cross over, so we get different traits. Independent assortment is when they line up differently during metaphase. And then fertilization, just random eggs and sperm. Like you never know which one you're going to get. So all these give us a wide variety in the ecosystem. So we're going to talk about 3 types of natural selection. This stuff is always really fun. The first one is called stabilizing selection. So think of stable. We're going to favor the average individuals in a population. Okay, the result is that this decreases variation in a population because if we're just favoring the middle, we're not going to have a lot on the 2 ends. So here's an example here. Okay, Siberian husky weight. Huskies are used for work. So the ones that have really large muscles, they actually sink through the snow. And those with smaller muscles cannot carry cargo. So over time, and this is called artificial selection, where humans choose the traits. Over time, humans have actually chosen for huskies to be a medium size there. Okay, another one is human birth weight. So large babies, it's really difficult to get through the birth canal, and most of the times we have to switch to C-sections for the babies to survive. And then small babies, they have a lower chance of survival because their lungs aren't developed and a lot of the parts aren't developed. So nature kind of naturally selects an average weight, which is typically between, I'd say about 6 to 8 pounds is about average weight. Okay, another example is seed size. So we want it big enough to store nutrients until leaves grow, but small enough to avoid being eaten. Okay, the next one is directional selection. This is where it favors one of the extreme variations of a trait. So the result when this happens is rapid evolution, and it follows a change in the environment. So I know this is really lame, but you guys remember the band One Direction? That's how I remember this one. One directional. Okay, an example again, this is artificial selection where humans chose the traits. Greyhound. So Europeans bred these dogs for their speed. This is called artificial selection since humans are choosing. So there's natural selection where nature chooses, and artificial selection is where humans can choose. So obviously they're going to choose greyhounds that are the fastest, and they keep breeding them and breeding them until they have really fast greyhounds. So that's one extreme. This one, I bet you guys didn't know this one. This one always blows everyone's mind. It's really crazy. So horses, I didn't know if you guys knew this, but horses used to be really, really small, like smaller than dogs. They also had many toes. They used to climb trees. Isn't that crazy? It blows my mind. They had many toes that they could climb trees and they're really small. But over time, the grasslands expanded, so they had really long distances to walk. So the environmental changes produce this is natural selection, selective pressures that favored fewer toes so they could walk easier. So you can see over time, less toes until the modern day horse. Higher legs, so those also increase, and also longer wearing teeth because their diet changed. So this is the modern day horse compared to what it used to look like. And again, how do they know that? Later next week, we'll have one more set of notes that talks about evidence of evolution, and that's kind of what we'll see there. Okay, so some examples as well as the pepper moth lab. Remember, it was fast evolution. We either favored the black moss in the polluted forest or the light moss in the light forest. Hummingbird beaks. So these guys, depending on how long the flower is, it'd favor if we had a change in flower size, it'd favor that. And then Darwin's finches, guys, this is what Darwin's known for, is their beak sizes. So when he went to the different islands, they each had a different shape. Okay, and then the last one is disruptive selection. This is where we favor both extremes of variation. So there's no middle group, and usually when this happens, sometimes we can develop into two separate species. Okay, so here's a good graph here. So the original population is this dotted line, okay? And now we're favoring the two extremes. So we're actually going against the average here. So an example is the butterfly. These two on the extremes kind of mimic, dangerous like toxic, poisonous butterflies. So birds know to avoid them, but this one does not. So this one is selected against. And eventually, if this continues to happen, if we don't have this anymore, these can develop into two species. Okay, beak size in hummingbirds. If the medium length flowers die out, only short and long flowers remain. As a result, longer short beaks are favored and the medium size is selected against. Another example is sexual selection, female male coloring in birds and fish. Okay, so what happens if these species get too far apart? This is called speciation. Speciation is the evolution of a new species over time. Factors that affect speciation, if we don't have enough of them, okay, they have a hard time breeding, small population size, and isolation. Populations can become separated. So now we're going to talk about the causes of speciation. The first one is geographic isolation. This is when populations cannot come into contact with each other and therefore can't interbreed. And over time, it develops into two species. So like if a mountain, and guys, we're talking about millions of years here, not like a few years. We can form mountain ranges. If an island forms, the Grand Canyon. So one example is Darwin's finches again. different islands in the Galapagos, they all started on one and then they started to go to different islands. And over time, the different traits are selected for. So you can see on this island, they probably favored bigger, there's probably bigger seeds there that gave us bigger beaks. Here we have smaller seeds or maybe insects with a pointed beak. So that, now they are no longer the same species. Look, they're all different. They can't interbreed with each other. This one's really interesting. This happened when the Grand Canyon formed. Two species of squirrel, they were the same, but eventually they evolved from one because of isolation. The river, they couldn't interbreed, so you can see they're even different colors. They have a different diet now. Same thing with this type of fish. This formed the Isthmus of Panama, and they're on different sides now. And same thing, they can't interbreed. They're different colors, different diet. The other cause is temporal. This is where two or more populations reproduce at different times. So it has to do with their reproduction times. These nasty cicadas, these guys are gross. There's a 15-year cycle or 13-year cycle one and 17-year cycle one, and they come out, we do have annual ones, but these are the periodic ones where they come out, and even though they look similar, they come out at different times, so they cannot interbreed. Another example are the palms. Okay, they used to be the same species, but they flower at different times. So the calcareous versus volcanic soil. The volcanic flowers later than the palms, and calcareous soil, like an early group, may no longer be able to fertilize. So now bringing them together, even if we try to mate them at the same time, they are no longer the same species. And the last one, guys, is behavioral. This is where two populations, they actually can interbreed, but they have different courtships. So they have different rituals or other strategies involving behavior. So this one is really interesting. It's the eastern and western meadowlark. So they technically could interbreed. They're very similar with overlapping habitats, but they will not mate with each other because they have different songs to attract their mates, which I thought was very interesting. The fruit fly, it used to lay its eggs on hawthorn fruit, but now only one population does on apples. And because their behavior is different on what fruit they're reproducing at, they do not mate at the same time. Okay, and this one was an experimental one. They took a single species of fruit flies and they gave them different food. So again, different behavior, different diet. They did, a few, I think, say 8 generations, and then they tried to put them in the same tank and they would not interbreed.